Welcome once again to the illustrious Energetic Procession Studios, and I'm your host, Mr. Robinson. And this evening, I'd like to take some time to address a set of remarks by Anthony Rogers made on December 23rd of last year regarding an alleged debate challenge coming from him to me. And so I want to speak to that. So to jump right in here, on July 19th of last year, because I did not receive any response from Mr. Rogers addressing any of my arguments about justification in the Church Fathers, I sent links of my material to Tony Costa, the Reformed Baptist apologist, since he seems to be teaming up with Rogers, and Rogers has chosen not to engage the arguments I presented. So I thought, well, if Rogers is not going to answer, maybe Costa will. Maybe some other Protestant will. So in the ensuing discussion, Costa sets aside my material. He doesn't want to engage it and claims that Rogers issued a debate challenge to me in the past and claims that I haven't responded. So let me put up this slide here. This was the initial slide from Mr. Costa. He says, Rogers mentioned the debate challenge to you several times in his live streams on Galatians. Have you watched them? I have it directly from Anthony that he has a standing challenge to debate you. Will you accept, yes or no? So I asked Tony to document first that there had been some standing debate challenge to me because neither I or anyone else I know was aware of some previous debate challenge. So I'm like, well, first let's prove that there was some debate challenge that I supposedly have not addressed in some way or appropriately. Eventually, Mr. Costa brings out the video that Rogers did on July 17th of 2022. And about 2 hours and 24 minutes at around the 50-second mark, Rogers begins to talk about me. And he says that he would love to debate me, but I won't do it. Now, that's about all there is, apart from some other schoolyard tactics and remarks. There's no debate challenge there. If he wanted to issue a debate challenge to me, he could have done it directly. And this is what I told Mr. Costa. If he wants to issue a debate challenge, or he wanted to, he could have just contacted me directly. It's not that difficult. Secondly, I communicated to Mr. Rogers that this clip is not evidence of a debate challenge, and it's certainly not evidence of a debate challenge made, quote, several times. This is just a claim made by Rogers that he would love to debate me. So Costa cites no debate challenge made by Rogers and no decline by me to do so either. It's just another claim. Rogers' claim in the clip that I'm somehow some pawn of Sam Shamoun is really irrelevant to the arguments. Besides, if I'm a pawn, why would he want to debate me, right? In any case, even if it were true that I was being used by someone else, I was just a pawn, it means he got checkmated by a pawn. That's what it means. So it's irrelevant. And Rogers' framing of the matter makes it a personal issue rather than focusing on the issues and the arguments, and that's why it's irrelevant. So I told Costa that if Rogers wishes to issue a debate challenge to me, he can do so directly and in a documentable form, and not curried through a third party. As an aside, it should be noted that Seraphim Hamilton, also known as Cobain, has a standing debate challenge to Mr. Rogers, has had one since about March of 2022 on justification in Scripture, which has only recently been fixed sometime in March of 2023. In any case, if Rogers had made a debate challenge to me, it would have conflicted with his repeated statements in 2022 that he wasn't open to new debates until sometime after October of 2022. So here we seem to have conflicting claims. Rogers wasn't open to new debates until after October, but he supposedly wanted to debate me the entire previous year. Furthermore, even before October, he had been ghosting Cobain from August until the end of December, and only stepped forward after I and others made a public issue of the matter. So, on December 23rd of 2022, in his stream, Rogers says that there's a standing debate challenge to me, even though I have received no proof of some standing debate challenge all last year. The reasons are simple why this fake drama is taking place rather than simply answering the arguments. Rogers got nailed. And he wants to lay down some narrative that he challenged me to a debate and I ran away to give himself cover for simply not addressing the arguments. In any case, I want to address Rogers' December 23rd remarks. Now, I've been asked over the last few years, to do a number of debates on a number of different topics. I have declined them all. I also declined Rogers' supposed debate challenge now. So I ask you to consider my reasons for doing so. As a matter of policy, I don't do debates. This isn't specific to Rogers, so he honestly can't claim I'm running away from him or making other personal charges. For example, many months ago, sometime I believe around April, Kelly Powers, an Arminian associate of Mr. Rogers, issued a debate challenge to me in public on his channel. It's still there. I declined, and I explained why on Mr. Powers' YouTube channel comments. Perhaps Mr. Rogers missed my remarks there. In any case, I'm an equal opportunity discriminator when it comes to debates. I turn everybody down. So here's my first reason. I've been doing apologetics for over 35 years and Orthodox apologetics for over 20 years. That is as long or longer than just about any other Orthodox apologist and just about as long as many non-Orthodox figures. I have my own earned degrees in a relevant field, and I have taught philosophy in 2 universities for the better part of a decade as a graduate student and as adjunct faculty. I've done countless informal debates with just about every kind of unbeliever, cultist, and kook in creation, both online and in person, on the street and in the classroom. For example, I've gone nearly 10 hours straight with the then Jehovah's Witness apologist Greg Stafford. Now that's a name people in countercult apologetics should recognize. And I've done a number of others with multiple rounds with other Jehovah's Witness apologists like Hal Fleming and others. I've worked with and for various apologetic and theological ministries. And even before Rogers was out stealing cars and figuring out how to read a Bible, I was busy going inside of kingdom halls, Mormon churches, and such to witness to their occupants. And to this, some of his own Presbyterian elders that he knows personally can attest, as they were there with me. I've also played an instrumental role in leading them out of non-denominational land and into the Reformed faith to boot. By the time Rogers had become Reformed, I had already read the entire 38 volumes of the Church Fathers from cover to cover, the same set that Rogers points to on his shelf in his videos. I don't need to prove anything by doing a debate with Rogers or anyone else. Second, I don't find debates useful or conducive for finding the truth. Debates tend to be focused on gotcha moments, rather than presenting carefully laid out arguments or demonstrations. Debates move quickly, making it difficult for people to think through the reasoning, let alone examine it, imagine counterexamples, or check factual claims. Third, Rogers and others use debates to narrow the field, so they don't have to deal with the entire data set or arguments. Then they knock down a few arguments, claim victory, and walk away, all the while using the event to bolster their subscriber base, ignoring large swaths of data and detailed argumentation. This is especially relevant since in a better part of a year, over a year now, Rogers hasn't even watched the material I produced and now supposedly issues a debate challenge. He needs to deal with what's on the table, and he bears a burden to do so regardless of format. The arguments are out there. Either he can address them or he can't. Fourth, debates are not the standard means of assessing claims in academia or even by reason more generally. You don't go to graduate school in philosophy or pretty much any other field except like forensics or perhaps law. You don't go to a seminar, graduate seminar, and learn how to do debate or debate prep. There is no intellectual standard or principle out there that requires me to do a debate. The standard means of demonstration is by writing papers in academia and books which contain arguments. After all, books are just very long arguments. In short, what is required of me is that I present arguments, which I have done. Rogers has presented 0 arguments in reply, leaving all of my arguments happily untouched. This, of course, makes me quite content, as my work sits out there untouched and unopposed, doing its work, converting people away from the false gospel that Rogers promotes. Some may argue that this is social media and not academia, so academic standards are irrelevant. But consider this: if social media is even less restricted than academia, then I am more free to choose when and how I wish to engage. I chose to engage him with the same format he himself chose for his own case, namely a video presentation. So I simply met him on his own ground. After being crushed, he wishes to change it. In any case, which is a better method at finding the truth? Academic procedures or the internet free-for-all food fight? 5. Sometimes finding out the truth of a thesis requires a much longer presentation than a debate will allow. Rogers spent 6 hours, or nearly 6 hours, presenting supposedly just part of his case for the fathers expressing sola fide. There is no way that can be done in a debate, nor should it be done that way. Debate is therefore not the best way to find out the truth about matters that require long and detailed arguments. And the truth trumps all. So what matters is the best way to find or demonstrate the truth, not what the best way is to create a gotcha moment. Debates are often just too brief, and the length of Rogers' own presentations testifies to this. 6. Debates often do not feature the best representatives of a given position or the best arguments. Only those debates that do so would be worthy of consideration and participation. Does Rogers think that he is the best representative and has the best arguments? I doubt it. This is why I generally ignore the vast majority of debates, and I would suggest that most people should do the same. I would rather read a collection of essays by experts in their field who are at the top of the pile and who have spent a lifetime studying a particular issue, have a mastery of the languages and literature and so forth. This, of course, is not foolproof, but it is better than the alternative of watching the intellectual equivalent of chimpanzees screaming at each other and throwing their feces at each other, which seems to characterize so many online debates. 7. Since arguments are the means in the domain of reason for finding the truth, what matters is whether one has good arguments for one's position, and not the format, that by which they choose to express them. To think otherwise here is to confuse form for substance. This is why what matters is whether Rogers can answer my arguments, and not whether I formally debate him. Whether I debate or not, my arguments are presented and have been on the table for over a year now. Rogers has chosen for the last 12 months not to engage them or even to view them. He has chosen instead to issue insults, utilize schoolyard tactics, and knowingly fabricate arguments that I did not make and attribute them to me only to knock them down as straw man. I could not have asked for a clearer victory. as Rogers has complained about Albrecht's delays, which is now a non-issue. What is good for the goose is sauce for the gander. Does Rogers need 12 more months to answer my arguments point by point as I did his? Does Tony Costa? If they do, perhaps my arguments are better than they lead on. In any case, to my knowledge, over a year later, Rogers hasn't even viewed the arguments I made. The evasion shoe is clearly on his foot. The explanation for his dodging his argumentative burden is simple. He got crushed, and there is nowhere he can run in the existing literature because my arguments in some are unique. So there's no one else who treats them. So he retreats, tossing out insults and red herrings to cover his retreat from the battlefield. This is clearly seen in the fact that Rogers has offered no new arguments or material on the claim of sola fide in the Church Fathers in over a year's time, even though he has put out about 30 hours of content on justification. He is clearly avoiding talking about his earlier claim of sola fide in the Church Fathers. Again, why? The answer is simple. He got crushed. He was refuted, and he can't provide a refutation, so he dodges it at every turn. This is why he has retreated to an argument over Scripture, not realizing that the structure of my argument also applies to any case he may wish to make from Scripture as well. In essence, he has simply moved the problem rather than solved it. 8. I have already refuted Rogers' arguments. I have already demonstrated he is guilty of quote mining and a number of other fallacies. I used his own sources to do it. To date, Roger has yet to even admit he made a mistake quoting Pseudo-Jerome, that is Pelagius, let alone engage all the other material on Marius Victorinus and all the other figures that I discussed, every single one of them that he brought forward. Nor has he said where he obtained the text of Pseudo-Jerome from, or who translated the text. If this is what counts as apologetics, please count me out. So I have refuted his arguments, I have demonstrated he committed various fallacies, and I have demonstrated that he is not intellectually honest. And he has not proved capable of responding in over a year's time. So again, why do I need to do a debate? He's done. 9. Rogers and others are playing the subscriber game. So I want you to listen very carefully here. They pick a target, do a debate, generate subscribers, and move on to the next candidate, all the while taking donations as some kind of apologetic pole dancer and selling useless merch. Their entire model, it's a business model, is structured to keep people dependent on them, to generate cash flow and notoriety. It isn't designed to help people to learn for themselves. Welcome to the apologetics industrial complex. Keep the conversation and materials at a specific level so your customers are always dependent on you, and so generate stable cash flow. Stamp it with a picture of yourself so you have a brand and can inculcate brand loyalty, and presto, you are off and running. I am not playing that game. I don't take donations. I don't sell useless kitsch. If anything, I consistently point people to the professional literature and primary sources in hopes that they can learn to learn for themselves without being dependent on me. The goal is to equip people and duplicate themselves so that the work of the kingdom gets done, and not so resources get diverted away from the church to feed some new personality cult. Lord knows we have plenty of them and we don't need any more. Besides, I have a better methodology than his. I prefer to pick a topic and master all the available literature on it and produce a comprehensive case. That way, what I produce has staying power. It is more difficult to refute, and I don't get caught up in a tit-for-tat kind of trench warfare. As General Patton once remarked, I don't like having to pay for the same real estate twice. And because what I produce has more staying power, it tends to produce more stable people. People can actually come to an informed and relatively stable conclusion. Or at the very least, I carve out a path for people to follow to reach that destination. And this is exactly what I have done for a long time, and what I did with Rogers. It is one reason why no Protestant has produced a comprehensive answer to my presentation in over a year. They are, of course, free to try, but I am not holding my breath. It is also the case that I made a unique contribution to the wider debate. To my knowledge, no one else, either popularly or academically, has utilized the Pelagian texts and their historical use by Reformation and post-Reformation figures to discuss sola fide in the way that I have. This is true for all sides of the debate, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, or otherwise. When you do doctoral work, like in a PhD program, it turns out it's very difficult to come up with something genuinely new. The fact that I have apparently done so is not nothing. Consequently, my methodology has been demonstrated to produce something not only more substantial, but it has also changed the nature of the debate and the conversation. From now on, Protestants who bring forward proof texts from the Fathers will have to explain on the basis of the words in the texts why this text supposedly expresses sola fide, while this other one, which uses the same exact terms, does not. And they will have to prove that this verse of Scripture, for example, so it applies to Scripture as well, expresses the conceptual constituents that make up the concept of sola fide. They don't get to assume Protestant meanings for biblical terms. So, for changing the debate floor, you're welcome. In the end, either Rogers can answer the arguments I put forward, or he can't. It doesn't take a debate to do that. This is why a debate is unnecessary. Giving arguments, though, is necessary, and this is what Rogers has failed to do in over a year. What I am interested in doing is modeling better behavior, producing better quality work, and making disciples, and then plugging them into their local church so that the work of the kingdom gets done. Echoing Chesterton, I am interested in making better Christians, not so much more Christians. Consequently, my channel is devoted to displaying what is necessary to prove a case, how to present it dispassionately without distracting chest thumping, personal insults, or other pride-inducing behaviors. Such things make it harder, not easier, for people to hear what you have to say and be persuaded. After all, isn't that the goal, that people get persuaded? This is why Scripture enjoins us to give an answer with gentleness and respect. Now, I have not always exhibited that, but that has always been my goal. In conclusion, I don't do debates. I don't need to. I just need to give good arguments, and I have done so. Apparently, Mr. Rogers can't do so, which is strange for someone who claims to be an apologist. He can do debates, but he can't produce arguments. That's all for now. More fun stuff is coming, I promise. Good night, and God bless.